Let's make a pirate-inspired multi-layer necklace. Start out by cutting pieces of wire. I'm using 20 gauge wire and cut 38 total 1-inch pieces. So what I'm doing with this is creating a strand with all wire and beads. For this next part, I'm using a 1/7 looper to essentially make my own eye pins, then adding a 4mm faceted bead and using a 1/7 looper to close off the eye pin. Because I'm making one of the necklace strands with only beads and wire like this, it's going to require a lot. I normally would hand wrap the wire, but because I'm using so many, I thought it would be quicker just using a 1/7 looper. This tool doesn't completely close the loop, and I'm not closing the loops with pliers right now because I'm going to connect all of these pieces together later to form a necklace. Now that these are all made, it's time to assemble the skull. Using a piece of wire, create a loop around your round nose pliers, and then wrap the wire a few times below that loop. Cut the excess wire with wire cutters. I'm using this skull bead, but the bead hole is larger than the wire, so I'm adding a square bead on each side of the skull to block it from sliding over the wire. Also, the reason I'm wrapping the wire by hand is so that the skull bead doesn't move around a whole lot on the wire. But you're more than welcome to use a 1/7 looper instead. Just as a heads up though, it might move around a little more, and the skull might not stay upright when you're wearing the necklace. Alright, so now that the skull is assembled, it's time to connect the beads. You're just going to connect the loops on the end and close them with your pliers to create a strand. This part can be very time consuming, and if it's easier for you, you can always do this step as you're using the 1/7 looper instead of waiting until you're finished with that part. Once you've connected half of the beads, connect the skull and then connect the other half. I made this strand a total of 14.5 inches, which had 19 beads on each side. But with the clasp included, which I'm about to add soon, it was about 15.5 inches. So once you finish connecting all of the beads together, it should look something like this. Open the jump ring on the end of the clasp and add it to one of the beads on the end of the strand, and then repeat these steps with the other side. Next up, you're going to need some sort of pendant. I'm using this black stone one that I have that used to be part of a bracelet. It was a hard decision because I had so many to pick from. Now you're going to need some chain. I wanted the chain to dangle a little longer than the strand that I just made, so I measured 16 inches. Once you have your desired chain length, find the center link, and using a jump ring, add the pendant to the middle link. I had to use 2 jump rings so this particular pendant wouldn't be turned to the side. Open a link on one end of the chain and add it to the jump ring attached to the clasp, then repeat these steps with the other end of the chain. And then here you have the finished pirate-inspired necklace, which is so cute for a Halloween costume. I don't have an official pirate costume, so I hope you still see the vibe.